If you're in the JD Edwards world, you already know. The year-end 1099 process can feel, well, a little overwhelming. But here's the thing, it really doesn't have to be. Today, we are going to break it all down and demystify the whole process for you, from start to finish.
Oh yeah, it is definitely that time of year again. The annual tax season scramble is here. But, instead of feeling that usual stress, I want you to think of this as your guide, your roadmap to getting through the JDE 1099 process smoothly. So, let's just jump right in. Our goal today is pretty straightforward. We're going to map out the entire JD Edwards 1099 process for you, from that very first setup step all the way to hitting send on that final file to the IRS. So here's how our journey is going to look. We'll start with the most important part, the setup. Then we'll get to a fork in the road where you have to choose your path, A, P, or GL. After that, we'll get into the main event, processing all that data, and finally, we'll cross the finish line with reporting. Let's get going. All right, our very first stop is the absolute foundation for a stress-free year-end, and that's your setup. And honestly, if you get this part right, you are going to save yourself so much time and so many headaches down the road. Accuracy right here, right now, is everything.
This little checklist, this is basically the key to a successful filing. Before you even think about running a single program, you have got to go into your address book and check this stuff. Is the legal name a perfect match for the W-9? Is that tax ID valid? Is the person/corporation code set right? These details are totally non-negotiable.
And if you're wondering why I'm making such a big deal about that checklist, well, here it is. This is serious. A simple typo isn't just an oops you can fix later. The IRS can and will reject your entire filing, and they can hit you with fines for every single incorrect form. So the time you spend on setup now is a direct investment against paying penalties later. Let's just pause on this for a second. 9. It sounds so basic, right? But a tax ID with 8 digits or 10 or maybe a letter slipped in there, it's one of the most common errors out there. Every valid TIN has to be exactly 9 digits, so you've got to run checks to catch any that are too long, too short, or just plain wrong. Okay, so once our data foundation is solid, we get to this major fork in the road. This is where you have to make a big decision about how you're actually going to gather all your 1099 data. So let's look at the 2 different paths you can take. So JD gives you 2 main methods to do this. The first way is the accounts payable or AP ledger method. It looks right at your payment history, what you actually paid out. The second way is the general ledger or GL method. It pulls data based on the specific expense accounts you tell it to look at. They both get the job done, but they have different strengths.
So how in the world do you choose? Well, this comparison pretty much lays it all out. Think of the AP method over on the left as your flexible friend. It's awesome if you've got partial year data, maybe from a system switch, or if you deal with retainage. Now the GL method on the right, that's your rock-solid choice if you've got a full year of clean data, and it gives you this amazing audit trail. So you just have to look at your company's situation and pick the path that fits you best.
So once you've picked your path, it's time for the main event, actually processing the data. This is where we take all that raw information from either AP or the GL, and we start turning it into the actual numbers that are going to end up on those final 1099 forms.
And the workflow itself, it's a really logical 4-step process. First, you clear everything out. Get a totally clean slate from last year. Second, you build what are called work tables. You run programs to pull in all the data. Third, and this is so important, you review. You run reports to check everything. And finally, you make any little tweaks or adjustments needed.
So what on earth is a work table? Honestly, the best way to think about it is like a sandbox or a rough draft. It's a temporary staging area inside JDE. It's this safe space where the system gathers all the information that might be reportable. And this is so crucial because it lets you look at everything, make changes, fix things, all without messing with your permanent financial data.
Okay, so when you're doing that review, what are you actually looking for? This is your hit list. You need to ask, is everybody who should be here actually here? Are the payment amounts what I expected? And just as important, is anybody in here who shouldn't be? And look out for suppliers with the same tax ID that need to be merged together. This is your last chance to catch these things before it's too late.
After all that careful prep work and processing, we have finally made it to the finish line, reporting. This is where all that hard work really pays off, and you get to generate the final documents for your suppliers and for the IRS. And the star of the show in this final phase is something called the Right Media Program. This is the big one. After you've cleared, built, reviewed, and adjusted all that data in your work tables, you run this one program. It takes all of that clean, verified data, and it creates the actual 1099 forms and that electronic file for the government.
So at the end of all this, what do you actually have in your hands? It comes down to three key things: the printed 1099 forms that you're going to mail to your suppliers, the electronic file that you'll submit to the IRS, and of course, summary reports for your own records. And just like that, there you have it. From the initial setup to the final filing, you've successfully navigated the entire JD Edwards 1099 roadmap. See? When you follow these steps, you can turn what feels like a really chaotic process into a totally manageable and successful project.
So, to wrap this all up, I want to leave you with a question. Now that you have the map in your hands, what is the one single thing you can do this week to make your year-end smoother? And if you think back to our very first stop, you know the answer. It's almost always cleaning up that supplier data. Get that foundation right, and I promise the rest of your process will thank you for it.